Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking all the interest in this webinar on the role of pump storage in India's energy transition to renewables. We have very illustrious personalities here with us, and we were to start at 11:30, but Secretary Power has got home quarantined, and therefore there was a problem in connecting with him. However, we'll start this and request him to, as and when he joins, we will welcome him that time. So we instead of Secretary Power, who was to speak. No, right. So first we'll start with the welcome address by Dr. Jyoti Parekh, who's the Executive Director of IRADE. Ma'am, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Batra. I'm happy to welcome you all at this webinar to release our report on pumped hydro energy storage in India's renewable transition. This report was is an outcome of a collaboration between the Asia Foundation and Australian AID, and this we had several meetings before, and we worked together. First, the idea was proposed to experts and think tanks. And then also next level, we took it to discuss this with other stakeholders, such as Ministry of Power and private sector and corporate sector and public sector, investors also. So as a think tank, IRADE sees its role as to look at technologies which are relevant for India's development from long-term perspectives, from development perspectives. And what it requires is also to look at technical feasibility, socio-economic acceptability, and also, socio-economic perspective also, and environmental perspective also. And so we do multidisciplinary and multi-stakeholder analysis. Earlier also, we did the technology assessment for biodiesel, where we looked at from farmers' point of view, marketing companies' point of view, users' point of view. Also, we did carbon capture and storage, how it is relevant for climate change. We also worked for the Paris Agreement to look at what is the long-term scenario where, and what kind of gradual renewable entry we can do with what sort of technologies. So we are very happy to see that this pumped hydro energy storage really fits in there. And right now it's a first cut analysis, but I feel that we need to do much more later to establish a few real good projects from which can actually get going, and that would require further analysis of to decipher from so many sites that Professor Blakers of ANU have identified, to narrow down to a few actual projects. So we do hope that we will follow this up in future, but at this point, we are ready to release our report in this during today's session, and we hope to receive people's comments here from this audience, and we will follow this up later in a more meaningful way. I thank particularly the Asia Foundation, Nandita and Malvika Thirukude, also Professor Blakers and Australian AID, and many others who have made it possible. My own colleagues, Mr. Vinod Agarwal, Pankaj Batra, Rajiv Panda, they all have worked very hard to see how this fits into Indian power system. And we are happy to see that it does, and we will, this report release hopefully would be a landmark for many future activities. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the inaugural welcome address. We would now request Mrs. Nandita Barua, country representative of the Asia Foundation, who the Asia Foundation has enabled these studies to be done with the help of AUSAID and DFAT. And I'd request Ms. Nandita Barua to give her special remarks on the occasion.
Thank you, Mr. Batra. Thank you so much. A very warm welcome to all the participants, and I'd really especially like to thank Dr. Parekh and IRADe for hosting the seminar. A special thanks to Rod Hilton, who is here as the Deputy High Commissioner of the Australian High Commission in India. Rod, welcome to this session, and we're really happy that you could make time to join us. Thanks to Professor Blakers, who is from the other side of the continent. I don't even know what time it is in Australia, but we do appreciate that you have been able to join us today to share your thoughts. Professor Batra and Mr. Agarwal and all the other colleagues from IRADe, I think amazing lot of work has gone into this culmination of this report and the seminar today. It's been a build-up of almost a year of collaboration between IRADe, TAF, and ANU, particularly taking the global atlas that ANU had created and actually having a series of discourse around it in India with multiple stakeholders. And actually it was very, for us, it was very encouraging, and we were really enthused by the kind of response we got, both from the government and from technical institutes and civil society organizations, about exploring storage as a critical component of the transition to clean energy. Something that's been very interesting, which everybody has been talking about, is that COVID has had many pitfalls, but one of the things that COVID has made very clear and stark to everybody is that when you cut down on the amount of emission and fuel, you actually can breathe. Delhi particularly was really breathing well during the lockdown. And we saw that actually, if we are able to drastically cut down on the fossil fuel, reduce their dependence on some of this non-clean, non-green energy and move to a more clean green energy, I think the resurgence of the planet itself is going to be much faster, and it is doable. I'm also enthused by the fact that we do many webinars and achieve the same results in a 2.5-hour span that earlier we would have spent about 2 days doing. So to me, this new technology and the new way of doing business is also a contributor to, I think, fair amount of reduction in the carbon footprint that we would do otherwise traveling to different parts of the world. That's not to say that I'm not looking forward to getting into a plane at some point in the future, but clearly I think there's a reduced dependence on that kind of commuting between places. So I think for us, the whole issue of storage as a critical component of transition to green and clean energy has been important. The ability to explore it without an exponential cost, which is what was in people's mind in relation to exploring pump hydro earlier, thanks to the atlas that Professor Blakers put in the mix of this whole discourse, has been phenomenal. We have seen a lot of support from the government of India. I don't know whether we have Anirudh Kumarji with us today, but I think he's really been very supportive in the Ministry of Power. Sorry, unfortunately, we don't have Secretary Sahai right now, but of course would like to extend the thanks to the Ministry of Power and to MNRE for leading this discourse. I look forward to hearing from everybody who's present here today. And again, a big thank you to all our partners and collaborators, and special thanks to the Australian DFAT, the High Commission, ANU and IRADe for being with us in this journey, and to the Government of India for their absolute support in this process. So thank you so much, Professor Batra, and I'm looking forward to the conversation as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandita. That was that sort of captured what has been done in this study. Thanks very much. And you will see Mr. Anirudh Kumar in the panelist session. He is there. Let's hope it works out fine. Although Mr. Sahai was supposed to grace the occasion, but I'm not sure what exactly has happened because the link has been sent to his house where he is presently quarantined. And let's see if he joins. So we'll not hold up the session. We'll go to the next speaker in the inaugural session, Mr. Rod Hilton, the Deputy Head of Commission of Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Government of Australia. Request Mr. Rod Hilton to say a few words, please.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to everyone. And I do want to start by acknowledging, notwithstanding he hasn't joined just yet, the Secretary of the Ministry of Power's interest in this topic, and I look forward to him joining soon and hopefully being able to address us. But could I also have a very big thank you to Dr. Parikh from IRADE and Ms. Baru from the Asia Foundation for all of your work in putting together this. I'm not sure it's too much less work putting together a webinar. We always seem to struggle here at the Australian High Commission with the new technology. But thank you very much for the ongoing work with today's seminar, but also your interest in this topic. To my other distinguished panelists, and also can I have a shout out to Professor Blakers, who I know is a very keen and passionate advocate in Australia for this technology, and from those who have joined us from around the world, welcome to you all. We all know that electricity demand is growing rapidly in South Asia. Notwithstanding the current impacts of COVID-19, high projected economic growth rates across the region are going to see this demand continue to rise. Access to reliable and affordable energy is crucial to trade, economic growth and development. It will transform the lives of many millions of people, improve social and economic outcomes, and in turn contribute to a more stable and secure Indo-Pacific region. That is why it's a pleasure to address today's webinar on pumped hydro energy storage. It's an area that I believe has unrealised potential for South Asia. It's an area with increasing importance to Australia's own energy mix, and I hope it's an area of future collaboration between Australia and South Asia. As you may know, Australia and India agreed to collaborate on pumped hydro storage development as part of the Australia-India Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which was signed during the virtual summit between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Morrison on the 4th of June this year. We see the potential of pumped hydro energy storage in India and across South Asia. This is important due to the expansion of intermittent sources of renewable energy, such as solar and wind. Prime Minister Modi's pledge to more than double India's non-fossil fuel power generation capacity to 450 gigawatts by 2030 shows a scale of what is possible. But it also highlights the size of the task ahead that will be required in order to keep up with this electricity demand. Solar energy occupies centre stage in South Asia's renewable energy mix, with governments announcing impressive flagship initiatives, such as the One Sun, One World, One Grid vision, aiming to demonstrate India's global solar leadership by encouraging the phased development of a single globally connected electricity grid. Solar energy's share of the renewable energy mix is justified also on the basis of cost. Again, India's performance in this regard is extremely impressive. As of 2019, India is now producing the world's cheapest solar power. I note the recent remarks by Gautam Adani, chairman of the Adani Group, on how solar costs have dropped 99% in the last 4 decades and are on track to drop another 99% in the next 40 years. He himself calls for a green energy acceleration in the post-COVID world. Cost will be important for such a green energy acceleration, but maintaining grid stability is also critical, especially with solar energy occupying such a large share of South Asia's generation mix. New energy storage solutions will need to be found. Australia also faces a challenge of grid stability and load management, hence the Australian government's investment in the Snowy Hydro 2.0 project, which will create an additional 2,000 megawatts of generation capacity and 350,000 megawatts of storage capacity. This storage capacity will be sufficient to power 500,000 homes for more than a week. Pumped hydro, of course, isn't the only storage solution. In Australia, we're also experimenting with a mix of technologies, including the giant Tesla battery servicing South Australia. But because of its geography, pumped hydro energy storage holds great potential for South Asia. We know this from the Australian National University's Global Pumped Hydro Atlas, which identified hundreds of potential sites across the region. There are, of course, challenges for developing pumped hydro sites. For example, sites need to be near adequate transmission infrastructure or risk facing steep upfront capital requirements, and the social and political concerns that are rightly raised by the resettlement of populations and environmental issues will need to be very carefully managed. But there is clearly room for growth. According to the Central Electricity Authority, India has the potential for 96,500 gigawatts of pumped hydro energy storage. By March 2020, India has around 2.6 gigawatts of operational pumped hydro, with another 3.1 gigawatts under construction and proposals for 8.9 gigawatts under discussion. Today's webinar is an important step in realising this potential. Australia, through its Sustainable Investment Development portfolio, is pleased to have helped profile this work and support today's discussion. If the Indo-Pacific is to have greater energy security, we must continue to build our economic relationships, promote more open markets, and increase trade, investment, and people-to-people links among our countries. That is why the SDIP partnership has supported exchanges on the technology across government, think tanks, and civil society in India. As part of SDIP, the Asia Foundation has held regular discourses on regional energy cooperation for the last 3 years. The annual Power Summit has evolved into the South Asia Green Energy Summit, reflecting the region's growing commitment to mainstreaming green energy through finance, regulation, and technology transfer. Such engagements have provided opportunities for Australia to partner with and learn from South Asia's experiences through capacity building and knowledge sharing in the renewable energy space. Australia is open to further opportunities to collaborate on pumped hydro energy storage, for example, sharing lessons on projects such as Snowy Hydro 2.0, as well as working together to overcome challenges in this important field. As such, I look forward to our continuing discussions on the finding of IRADe's report on the role of pumped hydro energy storage in India's renewable transition and the presentation on the Global Pumped Hydro Energy Storage Atlas. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hilton, for your comprehensive address on the role of renewables and storage in the global scenario itself, as well as the efforts of Australia in this direction, as well as appreciating the efforts that are taking place in this part of the world, which is South Asia. Thank you very much. Now, we would, there's a report on the subject of the study, which is role of pumped hydro energy storage in India's renewable transition, which has been finalized and completed. And we would, of course, get it released today. The idea was to get it released from the Secretary Power. So we'll wait for that part. In the meantime, Mr. Agarwal and Mr. Panda. Mr. Agarwal is the technical director, and Mr. Rajiv Ratnapanda is the technical head of IRADe. They will be presenting the key findings of this report through a presentation, which would be followed by a presentation on the Global Pumped Hydro Energy Storage Atlas by Professor Andrew Blakers of the Australian National University. So I would request Mr. Agarwal and Mr. Panda to kindly make the presentation.
Thank you, Pankaj, and good afternoon to everyone. I think Dr. Jyoti Parekh already having covered the background of the study well. In order to optimize the time, I'll straight away switch over to the presentation. Pankaj, can you share the, I think screen is shared, so I'll try to load the presentation.
Should I share it or?
No, it's there, it's there.
Okay, fine.
Can you see the presentation, Pankaj?
No, not yet.
Just a minute.
Yeah. Yes, you can see it now.
Is it visible?
Yes, fine.
Yeah,
It's fine.
very well.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll start with the presentation, and the slide, what you can see on the screen, currently the renewable penetration in Indian grid is of the order of 24%, the top right circle. And the grid is able to absorb this much renewable without much of a difficulty. But there are ambitious plans to add renewable capacity in the grid. And as we can see in the year 2022, it would be of the order of around 37%. 2027, it would be of the order of around 44%. If we convert into gigawatt, it would be of the order of around 275 gigawatt of the renewable capacity. So once this much of renewable capacity is there in the grid, balancing is going to be a challenge. And this particular study, basically, the objective of the study was under these conditions, when the renewable penetration is more, how the balancing can be obtained, what are the different avenues for that. These are the four main interventions of the study: the deployment of large RE challenges, comparative study of different storage technologies, role and utility of pumped hydro energy storage, and a roadmap further. Dr. Parikh has already deliberated upon this. I'll not spend much time. This is the first roundtable. There were two roundtables and one regional conference. This was the first roundtable, and the key organizations participated were thought leaders from energy sector and think tanks. These are the four main avenues what we deliberated. What could be the possible solutions, how the balancing can be addressed: demand side management, thermal flexibility, grid flexibility, and storage technologies. One by one, we'll just in brief, we will touch all these four avenues. The demand side management, if we see in some of the developed countries, in fact, even 8 to 10% of their peak demand, they have been addressing by way of the demand side management. It's a very, very powerful tool. In India also, it is picking up, but right now it is in a limited stage only, and it requires a lot of advancement in the distribution infrastructure and policy, the time of the day metering, segregation of feeders, matching of tariff design, adequate incentives and all that. So basically it needs special attention and policy and regulatory push. But otherwise it's a tool, and it is expected that 3 to 4% of the peak demand to start with, we can address by way of the demand side management. Thermal flexibility is another important avenue, and with large thermal fleet available in the grid and latest CRC norms, which allow the backing down also up to 55% level, definitely lot of relief is expected from this. But again, when we look in details in the thermal flexibility part, there are certain limitations when we start depending more on the thermal flexibility. Like if we operate the units at low plant load factor, there is an inferior heat rate, excessive wear and tear, additional cost towards retrofits and all that. And thermal units, again, they have a limited ramping up, ramping down capability, around 1% per minute, that type of capability. So these are some of the limitations are also there. In fact, I'll just like to share in the 5th April, 9 p.m. 9-minute interval in a grid of 120 gigawatt, at that time that was the load, the relief from the thermal generation was of the order of around 8 to 10%. So this was the thing. So some limited avenues are there. As far as grid flexibility is concerned, we have a very large grid with lot of strength, HVDC networks, large EHV transmission network is there. There are green energy corridors, and the STATCOMs are there which control the voltages. But basically the grid, it facilitates the displacement of renewable energy from one part to the other. That is the main advantage. And strong grid is required. But if we look at the numbers for the balancing and all that, there may not be much, but the strong grid is required for the displacement of the renewable energy. We come to the last avenue, which is the most sought after avenue, that is the energy storages. And these are the different types of energy storages are there. globally, these are being used. Pumped hydro and electrochemical, that is the battery storage. They are the most commonly used storages. And in the second round table, discussions, mainly the discussions were carried out on the different type of technologies, what are the advantages and limitations of those, and the key organizations participated were all policymakers, regulating agencies, and stakeholders from the different agencies. This gives a comparative study of the different storage technologies, and as we can see, if the pumped hydro energy storage and the batteries, they are the main type of storages. If we look at in the lower side, lithium-ion batteries, they are commonly being used, but again, that depends on the application, etc. Whether we want to do the power quality improvement, frequency regulation, some time shifting, etc., then definitely they are the solutions. But they can be used for a limited period of time, say 1 hour to 2 hours. That is the type of usage. While on the top, if we see pumped hydro energy storage, it's a commercial and mature technology which can be used for 6 to 10 hours at a stretch, and it is available in the gigawatt range. So battery storage and PHES technologies, they are found out to be the most suitable as the storage technologies, and their role is complementary in nature and depends on the application and time of use. But this is very clear that if we are looking for a gigawatt range storage with energy arbitration principles, then pumped hydro energy storage is the solution. What I am telling gets further strengthened by the fact that globally, if we look at the different storage capacity, out of the 173 gigawatt capacity, around 96%, that is 169 gigawatt capacity, is the pumped storage. And this is May 2017 figures. Last 2 years, another 2-3 gigawatt has increased, but again, it remains in the range of 95% or so. So across the globe also it is being used. And if we want to use for the energy arbitration, when we are looking for hundreds of gigawatt of the renewable energy, definitely the storage is also required in terms of gigawatt range. So pumped hydro energy storage, it appears to be a very, very viable solution. One particular aspect that is being talked about the pumped hydro energy storage is about the cost. There is a notion that it has a very innovative cost, high costs are there. But if we look at the recent order, what has been placed by SECI on Greenko and Renewable, the levelized cost of energy in case of pumped hydro energy is 6 rupees 12 paisa per unit, while in case of battery storage it is 6 rupees 85 paisa per unit. This gets like substantiated that as far as cost is concerned, they are competitive. Then there is another notion that with the passing time, the battery storage prices are going down. But what I would like to say is, if we go for the technological advancement in case of the pumped hydro energy storage, like closed loop off-river pumped hydro energy storage, here also a lot of technological advancements are there, and there are avenues to get the cost in case of pumped hydro energy storage also reduced. So I'll not go again detail into the off-loop, closed loop, off-river type, because Professor Blaker, he would again be deliberating on this, but this has an advantage, and this takes care of the cost aspect also. I think I'll stop at this end, and I'll ask my colleague Rajiv to take over.
Thank you. Now, in the first two workshops, we focused on the policy level and also other aspects. And we had a third workshop where we also, try to push the envelope a little bit forward, and we try to see that how, from a South Asia regional perspective, how some of these things can be enhanced, because as we know that the grid has been integrated between the South Asian countries, and trade has been increasing over the years. So from that point of view, we thought that we also look into from a regional perspective, how some of these storage aspects can also be addressed. Next slide, please. So we had a workshop, and we had participation from BBIN countries, Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. And we deliberated on the various storage technologies, and also from the point of view of, we know that a lot of hydropower potentials are available in these countries, and how some of these sources can also be developed from the point of view of a sort of a regional grid point of view. Next slide, please. As I was mentioning that, there is a lot of potential available in the South Asian region, something around 350 gigawatts, and BVN countries also has a significant hydro potential. And unfortunately, not much of this potential has been developed so far. And currently, something around 18% of the total potential has been developed. And the countries like Nepal and Bhutan, in case of Nepal, only 1% has been developed so far, and in case of Bhutan, only 8% has been developed so far. So there is quite a bit of potential even in the regional context, and not just about the hydro potential, but also there are a lot of pumped hydro potential. I know that Professor Blecker will be speaking on that from the Atlas. There are a lot of sites available, so there is a lot of potential on the regional context, which can also be tapped for meeting the storage requirements. Next slide, please. We also know that fortunately, not just India, but many other countries are also making a lot of efforts to increase the renewable energy. Bangladesh is also planning to have 7.9 gigawatts by 2041. Similarly, Sri Lanka also. So a lot of renewable energy expansion is happening, and therefore it's obvious that the storage requirements also needs to be addressed. So in these countries, the hydropower through cross-border electricity trade can also help in optimize grid balancing, because it can help you to optimize the overall storage requirements. It can also act as a tool for flexibility and managing RE intermittencies. More importantly, it also can help in developing a regional power market, because in some of the cases, absence of the market doesn't bring some of these technology into the commercial exploitation. So there is an opportunity to develop a regional power market, where not just the power can be traded, but also the trading of balancing services and ancillary services can also be traded. I just tried to recently update about this one sun, one world grid, and in fact, this also kind of helps to optimize the storage requirement, because as you have a overall regional grid in place, so the storage requirement can also be optimized. There was a reference made to the 9 p.m. 9 minutes. Interestingly, during that event, something around 400 megawatt of flexibility was achieved from the hydropower plants in Bhutan. I mean, it's not directly linked to balancing as such in the RE context, but that event tells you that you can have balancing some sort of flexibility requirement from the cross-border aspect also. And I also believe that the new power market initiatives in India also offers an opportunity to leapfrog in these areas. We know that some of these things are pretty common in many parts of the globe. For example, in Europe, it is quite prevalent that the regional balancing does take place. Just to quote that in 2016, 80% of the Denmark's wind generation was balanced through CBET through the utilization of Norway's hydro resources. So they are small countries, but it just gives you an indication how it can be done in a regional context as well. Next slide, please. Then let me come to the business model and commercial viability of PHES. We all know that from a commercial point of view, it has been challenging, and the current some sort of model does have its own challenges. Sometimes it doesn't stand competitive in the face of declining tariff, and it's also kind of not necessarily that easy for the private sector to participate. However, in the option 2, so we kind of looked at 3 options, so to speak. So in the option 2, one could be that it can be treated as a regulatory asset, and it can be operated by the grid operator depending on the requirements. And of course, the tariff can be decided by the regulators, and and it's similar to some sort of security constraint dispatch that we are having. And the third option could be the market-based system, so where the power plant has to provide certain minimum hours of supply for each day, and the capacity charges will be paid if that minimum hours of supply is maintained. And of course, there could be some incentive measures if it is available beyond that. And the tariff for the output power, that is balancing power, it can be decided based on the competitive bidding. And for the pumping power, it could be the cheapest source of energy, or it could be also be allowed to buy from the power market. So these are broadly the 3 kind of options that we kind of thought that will play. Some of these are already happening in some sense, and maybe more details need to be worked on with specific financial aspect of that. Next slide, please. So just to conclude, as we looked at not just pumped hydro, but other aspects of our energy storage. So some of the findings are that we felt that it is important to accelerate the DSM to support this balancing, because it does have a lot of value in Indian context, because DSM is not that prevalent in India as compared to many other countries. It is also quite crucial to just value the balancing power, because it's important to value that that aspect of the power, so that the proper pricing mechanism can be thought of. We understood that different storage technology to be deployed, because we cannot rely on just one technology. Of course, it will be deployed based on the usage and the economics aspect of that. As mentioned earlier, batteries will play an important role, but mainly for the short periods and for bulk energy storage like arbiters and others. The PHES, of course, offers a solution as a storage for bulk energy storage. Of course, off-river closed loop is a potential, and some sort of a long-term outlook also need to be thought of, clearly laid out what could be the outlook for the off-river part, because it does have some promising aspect of less cost and maybe relatively quick to build and so on and so forth. And it is also important to explore new innovative business, also the financing models. So not just the business model, but also the financing models, which actually help us to actually fructify some of these potential into realities. Next slide, please. So thank you all. We just thought to put some of these findings in a brief manner, and we'll be happy to discuss as the program goes on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agarwalji, and thank you, Rajiv, for the key highlights of the study report on role of pumped hydro storage in India's renewable transition. Now, I would request Professor Andrew Blakers, who has taken out the global atlas on pump storage, and has actually played a key role in dissemination of this information in this study, as well as he's been doing it in many other places. So I think it's let's listen to Professor Andrew Blakers, who's a professor in Australian National University and has held several personal fellowships. I would request him to make his presentation. He's actually opened the eyes of people into this off-river pumped storage, which are much cheaper to build than river-based pump storage. Where we have, of course, another panelist in the panel discussion. We have from West Bengal State Distribution Company Limited, Mr. Surajit Chakravarti, who's actually erected the first one in India of river pump storage. We'll have him talking about the panel discussion. But right now, Professor Andrew Blakers, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. Okay, is my screen shared successfully?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes on pumped hydro storage to support 50 to 100% renewables. So the first point to make is that solar, PV and wind have won the energy race. This graph shows the number of gigawatts in 2019 for various technologies. Solar PV was #1, wind was #2, and fossil and nuclear was only just marginally larger than wind, and solar PV was much larger. The other renewables are important in some regions, in some countries, but are not going to be very important in the overall global scheme. So solar PV and wind, both variable, have basically won the energy race. Renewable energy deployment per person is shown in this graph for a range of countries and regions. And you can see the extraordinarily rapid transition happening in Australia on a per person basis. 2018 red, 2019 green. So Australia is installing about 4 or 5 times more solar and wind per capita than China, Japan, USA, Europe, and about 10 times faster than the rest of the world. So this means that Australia is a pathfinder and needs to find some solutions to high levels of renewables sooner than most other countries. So in order to stabilize 100% renewables, you need technical diversity. If you have both solar and wind, that's great. The wind sometimes blows at night, the sun never shines at night. You need wide geographical dispersion, and fortunately India is a large country, and if it's still weather and cloudy in one place, it might be sunny and windy in another, and you can move power from one place to another. Demand management is important to shift loads from night to day to take advantage of solar. But in the end, you do need a lot of storage, and pumped hydro is about 96% of storage power and 99% of storage energy around the world. So as I mentioned, wide area sharing of solar and wind is really important. State of the art at the moment for high voltage DC transmission is 1.1 megavolts, 3,000 kilometers, 12 gigawatts with about a 10% or so loss. And that stretches from north of India to south of Sri Lanka. So India, the whole of India is within range of off-the-shelf high voltage DC transmission now. On-river pumped hydro storage is by far the dominant form of storage at the moment, where the water in an upper reservoir on a river is exchanged up and down with the water in a lower reservoir in order to achieve storage. But there's a vastly larger number of sites away from rivers, which also avoids the environmental pushback from damming yet more rivers. This is a good example from Italy, an upper and a lower reservoir, both artificial, neither near a river, connected with a tunnel. This is a gigawatt power rating for 6 hours with 6 gigalitres and very, very small areas of water compared with the typical river-based system. So we have used various computer algorithms to search the whole world so far outside polar regions for pumped hydro sites. And this is a snapshot from our global pumped hydro atlas. And you can zoom in to India and Pan, and then you can zoom in a bit more, zooming into southern India in this case, and you see that the dots resolve into upper and lower reservoirs. And the uppers are light blue, the lowers are dark blue. All of these are synthetic images, none of them are real. And you can click on any of the dots and get detailed information about the reservoir pair, or you can click on an individual reservoir and get information about that reservoir. This is an example of a three-dimensional view which is available in the atlas. You can see the upper and lower reservoirs for a 50 gigawatt hour reservoir. This is quite a large reservoir, class A, which means that it's a low cost reservoir pair. You can make out the dam walls. The tunnel route is shown, and you can click on the tunnel route and up comes a pop-up with detailed information about this particular site. And there's 616,000 sites that we found around the world with a combined storage of 23 million gigawatt hours, which is more than 100 times more than that would be needed to support 100% renewable energy around the world. So India, we found about 500 gigawatts, which is much more than India needs to support 100% renewable energy. So comparing on and off river, there's 100 times more sites off river, so you can discard sites that are difficult for environmental or social or cost reasons. You can be very choosy, just pick the best sites. Because the upper reservoir is not in a river valley, it can be on the side of a hill or top of a hill. You get much larger height differences or heads between the two reservoirs, which allows much lower cost. Heads of 500, 600, 700, 800 meters are quite common. Because you're not on a river, you don't have to pay for flood control. And because you're not on a river, construction is much faster. Each site looks much like the other, so you can essentially do copy paste, which means you can build these things quickly. So the system benefits of pumped hydro, of course, is it's mature, off the shelf, vast numbers of sites. There's inertia in a heavy rotating generator. There's rapid response, anything above 20 seconds if you design it that way, and black start capability and other system benefits. The environmental benefits compared with other forms of storage, in particular river-based storage, are all the sites that we found are outside national parks and urban areas. And the combined reservoir area required to support 100% renewable electricity in Australia is about 2 square meters per person. That's about the size of a bathtub. And Australia has about 8 times larger per capita electricity consumption than India. India's per capita consumption will, of course, rapidly increase, but even when it catches up with a country like Australia, it's still only a few square meters per person of the off-river pumped hydro required to support 100% renewables. And the real water requirement is also small, about 10 litres per person per day, which is about the same as 1 minute of a shower. So our Greenfield Atlas is already completed, but we'd like to extend that to brownfield sites. That means looking in the vicinity of existing reservoirs and old mining pits. And for this, we need water volume information for the existing reservoirs and old mining pits. And if we can procure that, we can quickly develop also a complete brownfield atlas. So I just want to briefly touch on what's happening in Australia. So Australia's got the fastest development of wind and solar by far per capita anywhere in the world. It's got the most PV, the fastest PV and the fastest combined PV and wind deployment rate. And new gigawatt scale transmission is under construction. New gigawatt scale demand management has been introduced. There's gigawatts of new batteries and multi-gigawatts of pumped hydro. The Snow 2.0 scheme, for example, is 2 gigawatts for 7 days at full power. Another 2 gigawatts is waiting in the wings, and none of this involves new dams on rivers, none at all. So Australia at the moment is number 7 in the world for pumped hydro storage per person. And when the Snow 2.0 scheme is finished, Australia will be number 2 after Japan. And if we build another 2 gigawatts, which I think we probably will before the end of this decade, we'll be number 1. And the reason for this is that Australia is building solar and wind much faster per capita than any other country. So in summary, PV and wind offers by far the best chance to avoid dangerous climate change. It's cheap, it's available, and it's a very large industries now. And there is unlimited low-cost off-the-shelf storage to support 100% renewables, and pumped hydro and batteries are a really nice combination. Batteries including both utility batteries and the batteries in electric vehicles. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blakers, for that precise presentation and talking about the potential of pump storage sites that there are, and especially the closed loop or the off-river pump storage sites that there are globally, as well as in this part of the world and Australia. Thanks very much. I think a lot of people have become aware of this, and a lot of questions are being asked. So I'll just ask you one question because then we'll carry on to the panel. After the e-release, we'll carry on to the panel discussion. But one question is, I think everybody is asking a question about economics of pumped hydro storage vis-a-vis other means of balancing. So if you can briefly tell us about, you've already said that off-river or closed loop is much more potential, probably much cheaper than river-based pump storage, but as compared to the other forms of storage or balancing, if you can answer that.
Okay, the 3 cheap methods of balancing, and you need all 3, I think, otherwise you'll have an expensive system, are wide area transmission. If you have strong transmission from one place to another, you hugely reduce the amount of storage that you need, by a factor of 4 or 5. The second is you must be prepared to spill some of your wind and solar. And the third is you need storage. You can also include demand in the storage as a sort of reverse form of storage. And storage really resolves into batteries and pumped hydro. I really doubt that any of the other forms of storage are going to make it because of the huge advantage in terms of commercial deployment that pumped hydro and batteries have and are going to have. And batteries win for short-term storage, sub-seconds up to an hour or so, and pumped hydro wins easily for overnight storage or storage of a week, because water is basically very, very cheap. And you build a pumped hydro system, it'll last 100 years, unlike a battery, which will last maybe 10 or 12 years. And once you've built it, the costs of running it are very low. So for overnight storage, our estimate is that pumped hydro is a factor of 10 cheaper than batteries. For a short-term storage, batteries are cheaper than pumped hydro. So they go together beautifully.
Thanks very much, Professor Blakers. I think people have gained immensely from a presentation, and everybody is, of course, is asking for all the presentations, which we will mail to them and also put on the website. Thanks very much. Now, we are still not able to get Secretary to communicate with Secretary Power. So I'd request Mr. Rod Hilton, the Deputy Head of Commission, to sort of release this report. So what he can probably do is, we have a e-release. Since we didn't expect that it would be somebody else would be doing it, he can just come on the screen and well, press any button, and we will do this from our side. About is that okay, Shamishta? Shamishta?
Sorry,
or Shivani?
I would
Okay.
request, yes, Mr. Hilton to just say something so that I can put him on speaker view.
Yeah,
And
please put him on screen, and then would you like to say something, Mr. Hilton? He's actually.
Yes, I'm more than happy to try. I think I'm a poor substitute for the secretary, but I can find something hopefully around me where we can have a virtual button. I must admit, this is the first time I've launched something virtually.
Okay. Right. So Shamishta, if you're ready.
yes, so I thought Shivani was going to help.
Okay, Shivani, can you put it on the screen, please?
Yes, sir. Are you able to see this, sir?
So it's still opening.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
There are just a few selected pages, not the whole report. So please do read the report, which will give you a little bit more flavor.
Yes, if you've got physically delivered reports, as some people have, of course, Professor Andrew Blakers wouldn't, it's too far to send these physically there, but some would. And if you have that in front of you, please put it up in front of you. Okay. Right, we can see Dr. Kirit Parekh. Yeah, and Mr. Vake Saigal, Nandita Barua, Mr. Dinesh Chandra. Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And I hope this has been insightful. And of course, Secretary Power was very keen when this was presented to him, and he's encouraging a policy to be made on closed loop pump storage plants for India in view of the huge potential that we have in India. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the esteemed ladies and gentlemen on the inaugural session. Thank you very much. We will
My colleagues Rohit Magotra and Sharmishta Ghosh and Rima Bardhan, they have been working very hard to make this a success, and Shivani Brinja. Thank you.
Right.
And of course to Mr. Pankaj Batra.
Right. Right. Now we'll go on to the, since e-release is done, we'll go on to the panel discussion and the question and answer sessions. So I request Sharmishta to see that everybody all the panelists are videos are on and the mics they're mic enabled and video enabled. Sharmishta, is that okay? Mr. Devesh Sharan,
Yes, Mr. Batra, everybody can.
They're all enabled, yeah. Mr. Devesh Sharan is, yeah. Mr. Sharan,
I think I can. No, but I can't. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see you. So if you could put on your video.
No, but it still says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. So,
Sharmishta, please enable Mr. Devesh Sharan's video.
On that.
In the meantime, you can go ahead. I'll keep trying. You can start.
Right. Okay, okay. So Sharmishta, please enable Mr. Devesh Sharan's video. In the meantime, we will start. Mr. Anirudh Kumar, Additional Secretary, MNRE. I am not sure whether he has joined because he was in a meeting with the Secretary, MNRE, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Sharmishta, can you see whether he has joined?
Yes, 1 second, please. Meanwhile, Mr. Sharan's video is on. So if you'd like to carry on.
Okay.
Yes.
But, so are you able to see? Rima, are you able to see Mr. Anirudh Kumar if he's joined? Mr. Anirudh Kumar?
One second. So I can't see him.
Okay.
So he hasn't.
So we got a call from his PS that he would join when he gets free. So I think we will continue then. We will continue with Mr. Dinesh Chandra, who's member Hydro of Central Electricity Authority. He also holds another charge of another member, of grid operation and distribution. So Mr. Dinesh Chandra, he's been throughout in CEA, Central Electricity Authority, which is the apex technical body in India, in the power sector. I'd request Mr. Dinesh Chandra to, do you have any presentation or would you like to talk, Mr. Chandra?
No, I don't have any presentation.
Okay, fine. So you can talk about the subject.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr.
Oh, sorry, Dinesh. 1 second. I'm sorry. I messed up a little bit. Mr. Dr. Kirit Parekh will be chairing this session of panel discussion. I'd request him to say a few words before we start the panel discussion.
Well, thank you, Mr. Batra. I think Professor Blaker has pointed out very clearly the various advantages of having a pumped, at least off-river pumped hydro storage. Now, I think there are some of these advantages are particularly relevant for India, mainly because we are a very densely populated country, and that any kind of a hydro development that you do usually requires a lot of resettlement and displacement, which takes a huge amount of time to sort it out. So the conventional hydro systems, though required in many cases because we have to have water storage systems anyway, because India's water availability is very unevenly distributed across the country and across time of the year. Therefore, storage is important. Yet, the conventional storage systems require a huge amount of time to build. There is a huge cost involved in it, and that in terms of having it for pumped hydro, or there are also other limits, because if you say many of the run-of-the-river schemes, if you look at it, there is a huge difference between all we need to worry about how to do the balance it around the year. Secondly, the storage systems, there are also other demand for water, for irrigation and other things, and they have to be balanced. So I think having an off-river pump hydro system provides a very attractive solution in many ways. It can be done shortly. It's available, as you pointed out, in the distributed country. The displacement involved is minimal, if any, and that we have a large amount of potential sites available. So we can choose and we can work it out in a very quick and easy way. And it can be done over a very short period of time. Of course, the question of relative cost of different technologies is critical, the ability to how quickly it can be brought in. And the important thing is what is the energy loss in pumping up and down, and how can this be balanced in terms of economics will depend critically on the kind of power tariff and regulation we have, and what kind of difference between peak power and base load we are going to permit or going to have it, and how do we bring in market mechanism here to make this system work much more efficiently and automatically. I mean, these are the issues maybe I hope the panelists will address some of them here, and let us see. I think this is a very exciting opportunity that we have. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wise remarks on the subject. Now, Mr. Dinesh Chandra, member Hydro CA, I request you to say a few words on the subject of. Could you please come on?
Thank you, Mr. Batra. And very good afternoon to everyone who has joined here. Good afternoon, Chairman Mr. Parekh, this panel. First of all, I am thankful to you for inviting me on this occasion. First, I think I would like to make the things clear regarding the hydro projects that are under operation or that are under construction in India. So at present, the 3.3 gigawatt capacity of pumped storage plant that is in operation, that is operational, and about 1.5 gigawatt is under construction. So that makes it total 4.8 gigawatt, which is currently in operation or which is yet to be working in PSP mode. I mean, they are installed, but they are not working in pumping mode. Then schemes under construction, they are 3, and their capacity is 1.6 gigawatt. Then there is one DPR which has been conquered by CA, that is Turga pumped storage plant in West Bengal, for which the clearances have been obtained and construction will start shortly. And I would like to inform that around 8,200 megawatt of pumped storage plant capacity is under pipeline. The national investment pipeline has got 8,200 megawatt of pumped storage plants, which have to come up by 2030. And now coming to this one, regarding this promotion of pumped storage plants, the issue of cost is certainly there. And in order to tackle that issue, Government of India last year in March, they had notified certain measures like declaration of large hydro as renewables, or provision of hydro purchase obligation, provision of backloaded tariff, provision of long-term loan, and provision for the financial assistance for creating the infrastructure. So all those measures were taken by the Government of India, and that is certainly going to help in reducing the cost of the plant, reducing the tariff of the hydro projects, including the pumped storage plants. And our secretary, I would just like to mention, our Secretary Power, I was very, I was looking forward for joining him, and we wanted to hear him, certainly. But I would just like to mention that in almost each and every meeting, he would always mention that pumped storage plant must be encouraged. We have to take all measures to ensure that PSP comes up to a large extent and as early as possible. So that subject is very close to his heart, and he's very keen to promote it. Then regarding the requirement of pumped storage plants, so CA has already carried out a study regarding the power mix in 2030-31. So according to that, the requirement is of the order of 108 gigawatt hour of pumped storage plant energy. That is, if you have to operate it for 4 hours daily, that means 27 gigawatt of PSP is required by 2030. If we want to have some 450 gigawatt of renewable. Now, at present, we have got some 4.8 gigawatt of PSP, which is already constructed, and around 8,200 megawatt is in pipeline. So that means we will be having about 13 gigawatt of PSP in 2030-31. So that will be hardly half of what we actually require in 2030. So in order to make up for the shortfall, what we have to do is that we have to think of these schemes, hydro schemes, which are already available, where one or both the reservoirs are available, and we connect the two to operate them in a PSP mode. There are a number of such plants. States themselves have identified them. Sharavati is one, which is very good project in Karnataka, 2,000 megawatt. And I would like to mention that it was stuck up because of, pending clearance from Wildlife Institute. So now that I've just come to know that clearance has just been obtained. Now the survey investigation is just pending because of this COVID-19 induced situation. And anytime that survey investigation will start, and I hope that will also come up. Similarly, Sardar Sarovar project, which is already constructed, and their lower reservoir was not yet functional, and I understand that is also going to be operational by around October this year. So these are good development, and what we have to do now, I would like to congratulate this Australian National University for having come out with this atlas, hydro atlas, which shows, I think, some 16,000 sites for off-stream PSP with 56,000 gigawatt hours of capacity. So that's a gigantic size, and if we can take up them properly, and if we can share these details of the sites which have been shown in the atlas, if we can share those sites with the states concerned so that they can allot these projects to the interested developers, that will be very helpful because they can come up fast, maybe within 3 to 5 years. If they come, I think we should be in a position to meet the shortfall of about 15 gigawatt, which we should have by 2030. Then there is one issue that if we want to have feasibility, the financial feasibility of PSP, we need to have a good difference between peak and off-peak tariff. Recently, this TERI, the Energy and Resources Institute, has prepared a report that was released, I think, just 2 days back. They have carried out a study wherein they have found that in 2030, the average variable cost would vary by about 2 to 3 rupees. Between peak and off-peak, there will be variation of about 2 to 3 rupees. And if we have even 75% efficiency of PSP, I think we should be having a very good peak to off-peak ratio by that time, as far as the results of this study are concerned. So I think there is a good scope for the PSP to come up, and there is a good chance for such developers to take up these off-stream PSPs, and it should be possible to go ahead with them, and we should be able to meet the balancing requirement of some 450 gigawatt renewables by the year 2030. So I think that's what I had to say. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to say. So congratulations to the Australian Nation University for having come out with the Hydro Atlas. And I would also like to congratulate IRADe for having come out with this report on role of pumped hydro energy storage in India's renewable transition with the support of Asia Foundation and Australian aid. This is really a remarkable piece of work done by IRADe, and it will be very helpful to all the developers, to policymakers, to all the stakeholders in going ahead with pumped storage plants. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dinesh Chandra, for your for telling us telling all the people about the Indian perspective and the usefulness of these plants, the off-river pump storage. Thank you for also complimenting IRADe for the work that has been done on this. Now I'd request. Sorry, Rima. Okay. Now, so I'd request Mr. Abhay Kumar Singh, who is the Chairman and Managing Director of National Hydroelectric Power Corporation, the largest hydro utility in India, central utility in India. Mr. Abhay Kumar Singh, I hope he's there. Yes, yes. So please let us have your valuable words on the subject.
Good afternoon, sir. Thanks for inviting here. And after listening from Mr. Dinesh Chandra ji, now nothing is left to say. But since we are developing in the hydropower and the leading power company in the country, and our ministry is very keen for the development of the pump storage, and for this only we have chosen TERI Hydro Development Corporation, and they are inviting a global bid, and hopefully within a week time the bid is going to be opened for the techno and economical the feasibility of the various power pumped storage plants in the country. So already the things are working in the Ministry of Power, Government of India, and NHPC also looking after some pumped storage in the Odisha around 1320 megawatt, and we are going to sign very soon an MOU with the Odisha government to your keen. And I can only say there is no disagreement with regard to the urgent requirement for establishing the pumped storage projects for the grid stability, not only in the smaller size but the bigger size. So really the time has come for the development of the pumped storage plants. This Greenko company is already doing good work in this area, and we are also in touch with the Greenko. They have given some details also. So how this becomes viable with the system, that is the more important, and we are already working on it. And it was really good presentation by Mr. Baker, and we have seen how the things are happening in Australia and how we can do the faster pace in India, because as already discussed, everyone the problem of the RR issues and the flora, fauna clearances, etc. And just you see that you can be constructed in 2 to 4 years, whereas only the clearances take around 4 years in our country to start a new projects. So it is good that off river schemes are looking much better than the river scheme. So definitely we are working on it, and it was a very useful discussion here. We have gone through that, and we are continuous in touch with the CA and other government agencies for how early we can proceed in this development. So thank you, Mr. Natra, for inviting me here. It was really great to listen all the things. We have seen number of dots in their map where the office scheme or other schemes are available with the pumped storage in our country, and we are looking forward for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abhay Kumar Singh, and it's the audience would gain with people like you, who's been in the field for a long time on the hydropower stations, to be present here and for sharing your thoughts on the issues. Thank you very much. We will, after the panel discussion, we'll come to some questions which some of the people may have. Some have been answered, but some may still be there. Now I'd request Mr. Surajit Chakravarti, who's Director Generation in West Bengal State Distribution Company Limited, which owns and runs the only off-river pump storage functioning plant in India so far, which is Purulia. And the Turga is the other one which has been cleared, with Mr. Dinesh Chandra, member Hydro, said that's been cleared by CA. So I request him to talk about these plants which are already functioning. In fact, the first plant has been functioning since I guess how much, 12 years or something. Anyway, let us listen to Mr. Surajit Chakravarti, Director Generation in West Bengal State Distribution Company Limited. Please come in, Mr. Surajit. You would like to make a presentation, I believe, Mr. Chakravarti?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So, right. So I'll share that.
Thank you and good afternoon. I would like to share some of our experience in the off-river pump storage hydro. Presentation.
Yeah,
please.
1 second.
We are in the part of the country where there is abundance of coal. So we mainly depend on the thermal generation. And the run of the river capacity and storage type hydro capacity is very insignificant.
Can you see it on the screen? I'll put on the.
Yes. Now you
Right.
can see.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll move this.
Next slide, please.
Yeah. Can you see that we've changed one slide? Okay. More.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So we have got next number. We have got the potential of closed loop of river pump storage project, which has minimum seasonal effect. I mean, release of irrigation water is not that much required, a small amount, and the water comes from firstly comes from the accumulated rainwater, and then evaporation loss and other loss are replenished by the monsoon rainfall. So we have 4 fixed-speed generator motor pump turbine running successfully for 14 years. Next, please. So it's at 4 numbers, 225 megawatt units. The total project cost is 2486. Actually, it will come out to be 2.8 crore per megawatt. So actually, in 90s, we had a very significantly fluctuation in nighttime off and daytime and evening peak. So in order to flatten the demand curve and strengthen the peak, we have constructed this pump storage project. Next, please. So you can see there is a gap between average lean demand and average peak demand. It is about 2000 megawatt. And when you install a pump storage of capacity 900 or 1000 megawatt, you can supply 1000 megawatt at the peak and can absorb pumping power of about 1000 or something more than that at the night as a load. So that way you can immensely balance the grid by pumping and generating at peak and off peak. Next, please. Slide numbers. So we have done the construction of this main project work almost about 5 years. Total project is 5 years, 9 months. First unit is 5 years, 4 months. It's very small type. Next, please. Next, this is the artist impression. At the right top corner, you can see the upper dam, and at the left bottom corner, you can see the lower dam. And inside, you can see 2 penstock coming. That red one is the powerhouse and transformer cavern. And after that, the pipes are coming to the tailless outlet to the lower dam. Next, please. These are photographs. I wanted to share these photographs. This is the upper dam. This fully with full reservoir. You can see whole day this one, and this one is a lower dam. It is a night time. You can see it is. During night time, only for 2-3 hours you can see. Next, please. Next, please. This is lower dam. This is the powerhouse cavern. It's all in the floor. You can see that circular things. These are the top of the machines. And on the left wall, you can see the generator circuit breaker, very big installations. And the powerhouse is 157 meter long and 22.5 meter wide and 48 meter high. Next, please. All 4 units of the PSP being fixed speed during generation can go down up to 135 megawatt per unit. But during pumping, we can absorb off-peak power of 255 megawatt per unit only from the grid at a constant rate. Here is a problem with the integration of renewable energy in real-time basis. Next, please. So for starting in generation mode, it will take 5 minutes. And for all other activities like starting in pumping mode, stopping, it is all 11 minutes. For starting in the generator mode, it is 5 minutes. But we have got some other thing also. We can utilize the machines as spinning reserve, like combined load if 3 units, and we can keep the low to take care of the sudden tripping of the power supply in the grid. But it comes with the click of the mouse and spinning. While using spinning reserve, you don't have to wait for megawatt to come. Next, please. Another constant in this pump storage project is the generator circuit breaker. There is no problem in generator mode because the chopping is done in the ramping up of the load. But in case of pumping, the pumping mode, connecting or chopping of current in full pumping load about 10,000 ampere, the life of the GCB is very important parameter in PSPs due to connecting arcing horn contract. So pumping operation and PSP should be done judiciously in variables, and but in the variable speed machine, this problem is comparatively low. Next, please. So in the next PSP plant, 1000 megawatt Turga PSP, we are going to install 2 fixed speed plus 2 variable speed machine, so that in RE generation during off-peak can be done in large scale variable speed PSP machine. Next, please. So this is just a representation of the integration of the red line is the load curve, so it is fluctuating. So at evening peak, we can bring the power through PSP from day of peak, and we can also integrate solar power with help of pump storage project, doing pumping with the solar. Next, please. Next, please. So PSP should not be treated as a generating station only, as primary object of the PSP is to stabilize the grid, and numerous advantages of the grid connected installation are there. And their calculation, I mean the calculation of the advantages of the PSP cannot be done in actual. PSP operator should get some incentive for maintaining the grid within a given frequency range without resorting to load shedding. Next, please. In this part of the country, in Purulia, Ajodhya Hills, we have 4800 megawatt capacity. 900 megawatt is already running, as you have seen. So and the second one is Turga, and third one is Bondhu Pump Storage Project, 900 megawatt. It will also come. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chakravarti. I think this is a person, it's been running for 14 years. So you can see that they're early starters, and they're coming up with the second one and then the third one also. All closed loop pump storage plants. Right, thank you, Mr. Chakravarti. I think you've taken the lead in India, and a lot of people can now follow, are already in the process of following. Now, Mr. Devesh Sharan, who's Deputy Director General of South Asia Department of Asian Development Bank, I would request him to come, and I would like to ask him some questions on, because financing is another sort of ball game. So is it okay? I have 4 questions for you, Mr. Sharan.
Yes.
So if you want, I'll ask one by one, and you can answer these. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for participating in this webinar, because we wanted to see all aspects of pump storage, not only of people who are conceiving these plants or planning these plants, but people who are operating these plants, constructing, operating, as well as people who are financing these such sort of plants, because storage is going to become more and more important as you switch to more and more of intermittent renewable energy. And I guess that would also probably be a priority now in ADB's point of view, funding such projects. So one is that ADB has signed a $7.2 million loan with the Nomligor, a subsidiary of BCPG, to finance a 10 megawatt wind power plant in southern Thailand with an integrated 1.88 megawatt hour pilot battery energy storage system to increase the amount of renewable energy delivered to the grid. And also Mongolia's first utilities scale advanced battery energy storage system with a capacity of 125 megawatt and 160 megawatt hour is being financed by ADB through an ADB loan of $100 million and grant of $3 million from the High Level Technology Fund approved in April 2000. This is probably one of the largest battery storage plants in the world. Would ADB be willing to fund such private or public sector projects in India, which have renewable plus storage? Would ADB support a pumped hydro storage power plant? So one is renewable plus storage and the other is a pumped hydro storage plant. Would ADB be willing to do that?
Mr. Batra, thank you very much. Before I start, let me also compliment the team that produced this new book that you have released. So, and I found the discussion very good. So it's been very good. And on this issue, let me divide this question into three parts. One is renewables. So first,
Sharon, can you come a little closer to the mic? Right. Okay.
Okay, let me then. Is it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so let me break this question into three parts. First is renewable. Renewable is a high priority for us, and our current ADB strategy, what we call Strategy 2030, one of its operational priorities is tackling climate change. And ADB is targeting that by 2030, we want to have 75% of our projects to have some or the other component of tackling climate change. Of tackling climate change.
Okay.
Is the sound?
Yeah,
really
yes.
Let me wear this then. Is it better now?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Not even now.
No, it's better now.
And so we are targeting by 2030 to lend total $80 billion between 2019 and 2030 for renewable energy. So it's a priority, and we are obviously ready to look at renewable energy projects, and we have supported many so far. The second is about storage. So with rising renewable energy penetration, we feel that storage and growth of renewable energy has to go in parallel, because for successful integration of renewable energy generation into the power system, we need storage. So in that sense, ADB also would be very happy to look at storage projects. And in terms of pump hydro storage, definitely, since as it has been mentioned by some of the speakers before me, that for the large amount of storage and also longer period of stored supply, this is the best option. So we are definitely willing to look at pump hydro storage. And only thing I would say that these projects will have to go through our due diligence requirements. So I'll stop here. And I have actually maximum about 10 minutes. So I would just stop here. And if I'm not clear, I don't know how I can help, but let me know if my sound is clear.
No, now that's fine. Now it's fine. Right. So I'll ask you the other questions. One is, how has ADB been supporting development of renewable and storage projects in countries in South Asia and Southeast Asia? So are you supporting any projects in South Asia and Southeast Asia?
Yeah, can I, let me firstly start with renewable energy. Right. And just want to let you know that this has always been in ADB's priority. And over the period, we have only sharpened this priority. So, and I'm happy to inform this group that in 1996, ADB's first renewable energy project of $100 million was approved for India, and actually it supported 4 different renewable energy sources. This was way back in 1996. Then in 2001, we started a REACH program called Renewable Energy, Energy Efficiency and Climate Change Program. And then which further increased ADB's commitment. In 2006, we started the first Asia Clean Energy Forum that you have. That's where I met you first time. And this has over the period become quite a premier knowledge sharing platform. And in 2008, in our last strategy 2020, we targeted to double our lending for clean energy from 1 billion to 2 billion, and we achieved it and exceeded it by 2013. And of course, in 2011, we committed to a more comprehensive ADB's clean energy program. So our commitment to renewable energy has been going, and we have supported many projects, including in South Asia. And I would just give you the amount to be very quick. In last 10 years, we have committed $22 billion to clean energy. And out of that, more than 50% was for renewable energy and rest for energy efficiency and cleaner fuel. And in terms of pumped hydro, this is definitely our engagement so far has been a bit limited in this area, but we have supported both battery and pumped hydro projects. You already mentioned the battery projects, and actually the pumped hydro project of ADB, we supported one in Hebei long back, 1000 megawatt pumped hydro storage project. And that was commissioned way back in 2009 in China. But this is one area we have so far been, our involvement has been limited, but we are very much open to look at it, any proposal.
Right, okay. I think you've answered the next question, which I was to ask about pump storage, whether you'll, how does ADB specifically evaluate a pumped hydro storage project? Is it through cost benefit analysis, internal rate of return, carbon price? How does it evaluate pump storage, or in fact any storage project?
Actually, let me just begin by saying that for ADB, if there is any project, we have in general a rigorous due diligence process, and that covers technical evaluation, economic, where we also calculate economic rate of return, financial viability, where also calculate financial internal rate of return, then environment and social safeguards due diligence, which is very critical for us, and then other things like governance, financial management, and sustainability. So this is our base evaluation criteria for all sovereign projects. So any storage project comes, we would look at these aspects, we'll examine it in this. Now, in terms of pumped hydro storage, because of its very unique features, in addition to these, what I mentioned, we would also have some more examination of a few more aspects. And in terms of explaining it, the best is that what we do for a hydro project will also apply here. We would, and these projects have, because of the hydrology and geology, a lot of uncertainties, both in terms of the revenue, cost of construction. Then, as mentioned earlier, the safeguard aspects, environment and social, also can be very complex in this case. So we need to examine it more carefully. And there are other issues like permissions, risk, capex, opex, lifespan. So it would be basically look at comprehensively about the technical, economic, social, environmental, and overall feasibility and sustainability. And in case of pumped hydro, of course, there one more factor we will look at where it exists, the difference in power price at peak and off peak, and try to look at its estimates. So that's how we would look at essentially a pumped hydro project. Thank you.
Do you account for the environmental cost of disposing of lithium-ion batteries once their lifetime is used up?
Yes, we do. Actually, yeah, in terms of the financial and economic analysis, actually, this is definitely one element. But since you asked this question, and we have detailed guidelines for costing the avoided damages like carbon emission, NOx, and lithium in case of lithium battery, environmental damages. And just to give you an example, for example, for carbon, our guideline for social carbon, cost of carbon is $36 in 2016. And then I suppose they are supposed to increase 2% per year. So we have well-defined guideline, and definitely for avoided damages, it is factored into our economic analysis. Actually, in this thing, one more. Yeah, okay, I'll stop here.
Okay, right. So thanks very much for your perspective, which I think a lot of people were wanting to listen to. But just for your information, the cost of a closed loop pump storage project does not have a lot of the problems of river-based projects from the point of view of geological surprises or things like that, because they're automatic reservoirs which are already made. So very little of civil work has to be done on that. And there's already a stream flowing through this. So it's basically damming up the reservoir which was flowing down so that the water stays there. And it's not a major thing. So you don't have much of problems. Therefore, it takes about almost half the time to build as compared to a river-based hydro plant. And it's almost half the cost also of that. Whereas it saves on many other things about, as was already mentioned, about displacement by Dr. Kirit Parikh, about displacement of people and things like that, because these were already existing. You don't need to create a bigger reservoir. So thank you very much, I think, for your valuable inputs into funding of storage projects as well as renewable projects. Thank you very much, Mr. Devesharan.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. We see Mr. Anirudh Kumar has joined. So it's nice to have you, Mr. Anirudh Kumar. In fact, they were looking forward to you being there because you were there in the Power Ministry also, which was actually looking after these such projects. And now, of course, you are Additional Secretary in the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, which is again dealing with basically encouraging of renewables and storage as an associated thing. So I would like to welcome Mr. Anirudh Kumar, Additional Secretary MNRE, and request him to say, talk about the subject. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much. At the outset, my sincere apologies. We had 2 meetings with the minister in the morning, so I got late for this. Let me congratulate IRADe for coming out with such a fantastic report. This is given that now we are going to follow the low carbon trajectory for our power system. We want to reduce our carbon emission, and country, or rather our Prime Minister has almost sort of committed that we will have 450 gigawatt of renewable capacity by 2030, and that will certainly require some sort of storage, be it hydrogen, be it pumped storage, be it lithium-ion batteries, or be it some other kind of storage. And off-river pumped storage projects is certainly a wonderful solution. A lot of work is being done. Greenko has done a lot of work on that, and they seems viable also. But the only problem so far, I attended a workshop in Paris in the month of February on the similar issue, and there I had the occasion to interact with the global think tank about the pumped storage. So globally, the people are still trying to figure out that what could be the financing model for any kind of storage project, not only for pumped storage project. So we have to, most important thing is that we have, because unless there is commercial viability is clearly established, there is a need for the storage system is established. We need storage systems to increase the penetration of renewables. But how do we attract the investment in this sector? How do we generate confidence in the lenders to invest in the storage systems? So far, not only India, globally also, there is not a very established kind of a business or a regulatory model which assures the payback of investment made in the storage system. So before I left Ministry of Power, I requested World Bank to help us out, and they very kindly agreed to help to come out with a report. And on our request, on the request of Ministry of Power, the World Bank has already commissioned a study. They have appointed a very reputed consultant, that what kind of regulatory intervention will be required and what should be the business model, so that we can attract investment in this sector. As I have been saying in all your previous conferences, the need is established, it is required. We all know that storage systems are required. But when we go for investment, the investor needs to have assurance that they will be able to recover their investment along with some reasonable profit. So that is what where I will request you to focus upon. Technical aspects have been deliberated very long, and I will request this forum to focus upon to develop the appropriate business and regulatory model, where we can give assurance to our investors that don't worry, your investment is safe. You will recover your investment, because ultimately the proof of pudding is in eating it. And that thing I have been saying again and again and again. And it's not only India which is facing this kind of dilemma or this kind of problem. The whole world is facing this problem. In fact, some of the early pumped storage projects in Europe are already facing bankruptcy in the absence of such appropriate business model. So we need to focus upon that. That is my only suggestion to this forum. And I again congratulate IRADE to come out with such a fantastic report with the Atlas. This will certainly help our developers to develop the bankable projects to help us to increase the penetration of renewables in the grid, to contribute our bit to reduce the carbon emission in the world and reduce the global warming. So that is what my suggestion would be. And Ministry of New and Renewable Energy is very much alive to the situation. You know that SECI came out with the bid in the month of February with round-the-clock power with the storage systems, and the bid was successful. The Greenko was one of the bidder, and we are keenly awaiting the outcome of that bid, that it really sees the light of the day. And so that's my often comments on this. And I'll again request this forum to focus now on the bankability of these projects, because that is very, very essential. Unless the projects are bankable, we will not be able to move forward and attract investment in this sector. So that's all from my side, Mr. Batra.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there is definitely a value for taking care of balancing or intermittency, which is higher than the normal cost of generation.
How do we unlock that value? That is the only question. How do we really have this right kind of regulatory or business model to unlock that value or to monetize that value? I'll see.
Right. Such models are existing abroad in the form of ancillary services. I hope we have these things also come on market-based ancillary services in India, which would, I think, unlock a lot of value for this. Thank you very much for your comments on this thing and for coming over here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Batraji. Thank you, sir.
Now I'd request Mr. Sehgal, as Anirudh said that they won this, Greenko won the award. So I'd request Mr. Sehgal to talk about this. They are the people who are going to implement this renewable storage. So Mr. Sehgal, please come on.
Good afternoon. Respected Anirudh Kumar ji, Professor Kirit Parekh, Dr. Jyoti K. Parekh, Pankaj Batra ji, Agarwal sir, and all the dignitaries. See, we in the Greenko, as rightly mentioned, that we have been working for the last 2 years on such type of project, whom we defined as integrated renewable energy storage project, in which we try to, make an energy model by, integrating wind and solar along with the storage. And also, when we integrating, earlier we were talking about the round-the-clock power, but as we start analyzing further different aspects of the power scenarios, like in terms of the DISCOM's need, basically, because what we thought is that once we are putting RE because of the climate compulsions, then we find that why not we try to develop energy models where we fit into the DISCOM's need also, so that what Anil Kumar Saab ji ne bola, that there is a need for evolving the financial viability of it. We start working from there. Is can we provide energy in such a manner, though it may be there will be a difference between peak and off-peak power, but still it can be absorbed by the DISCOMs because it meets their requirement. Because looking into their future growth, rather than committing for a fixed thermal cost, basically, can we give them the energy model so that they take energy whenever they require? Actually, that was one of the agenda we try to fulfill while this one. And the biggest strength what we find is that progressively the cost of RE is coming down, and it is expected in the future, because in the recent tenders, if we talk about the solar, the price has gone as low as 2.36, and tomorrow maybe the solar price may go further. It depends on solar industry how they rate on it. But main agenda is that beside the climate compulsion of the RE, the another plus point is that we are getting a RE energy at a very competitive price actually. Now we have to take advantage of both the two. And can we do that? Because the moment we go for RE, because if we want to take an economic benefit, we want to take a climate benefit, if both combine together, it has its own inherent characteristics because of the need of balancing, because it is always available at the time when it is not, when the demand is not big, is much, but the RE generation is the maximum. That is the issue which need to be addressed, where we talk about this, we term as balancing, we talk about energy shifting, we talk about there are many means which we have deliberated in the earlier presentation. I will just go through my slides because the next one, because the most important aspect over there is because we have studied for last 5 years. The maximum demand, but there is a increase in the maximum demand, and the maximum demand is increasing by, say, the CAGR of about 5%, but 40 gigawatt maximum demand has increased in the last 5 years. And there is a gap between the minimum demand and maximum demand, and that is also increased by 7 gigawatt at the rate of CAGR of 9%. What we are trying to talk about is, by giving this figure, is that it is not only the RE which is coming over there, but the energy consumption pattern is also changing. It means the volatility or the need of flexibility is coming because of the two reasons. One is because of the change in the demand pattern, and another is what we rightly say, that as the RE integration quantum is continuously increasing. If we just see the analysis by which even the report has also very good way has brought out, by 2030 basically the renewable will be about 57% from the present figure of, say, 23%, and whereas the flexibility which is available in our grid will be order of 12 to 13%. And if we see even the operation of the thermal, if we just analyze the operation of the various generation resources in the country, we find that the moment RE integration is taking place, all the burden is taken by the thermal flexibility. And if we have analyzed different states who are having a RE rich states, and we find the most of the balancing it is taken by reducing the thermal generation. Now the question is, certainly there will be a limit will come. Now the question is, the moment we have a RE compulsion because of the climate, we have RPO compulsion, we have an economic benefit of RE. These are the characteristics of the generation which is coming to us. Certainly, there is another characteristic coming out there. There is a thermal limitation basically. Thermal cannot go beyond certain values. Even the recent report of POSOCO on thermal flexibility, where they have analyzed about 438 machines, and they were found there were hardly 8 number of machines which can go less than 40% basically. In fact, less than 50% is also very less percentage of units which can go less than 50%. What it concludes over there is, the whole thing is that this is the characteristics which we are going to face. Thermal cannot go below it. RE generation is coming there. Demand is a volatility. If we combine all together, certainly there is a need to find out the method which is financially viable. But as my experience says in my transmission planning also, because many things we try to introduce looking into the characteristics of the system actually, because it's the need of a system. Certainly, we should try to explore the financial viability of it. But like, I remember in 2012, when I was the head of the COCT planning, National Grid Development, we introduced many STATCOMs basically, because STATCOM were dynamic reactive compensation. Because at that time, we find this is what the grid is need basically. At that time, economics was the grid stability, grid reliability, grid performance. That was one of the main index basically. Similarly, when we talk about it, the grid storage, one of the basic driver for that is the reliable grid operation, keeping into aspect the characteristics of the thermal generation, keeping into aspect that RE is something which we are going to introduce because of the climate as well as for economic compulsion, both the compulsion that combine together. Under this aspect, the technical need is also one of the factors for finding of the economic viability. Second important factor is that avoidance of the transmission system. Like, if we talk about, there are many high solar areas. For example, we talk about Rajasthan. We are even talking about the Leh development. Similarly, there are many wind pockets, basically. We talk about Gujarat, and then we talk about Rajasthan. We are developing a lot of transmission system for the RE generation. Certainly, if we have a storage, it will give two benefits, basically. One is that there will be avoidance of the transmission cost, basically. I'm not saying total avoidance. Certainly, there will be a reduction in transmission cost. Second thing is, by putting storage, we are giving a better quality energy product to the consumer, which consumer wants basically, which is the byproduct of providing a storage actually. For example, I put a 10,000 megawatt. This is for example. Suppose I put a 10,000 megawatt storage, and by putting 10,000 megawatt storage, suppose I avoid a transmission system of say for 10,000 megawatt, suppose there is a generation of say 40,000, and put a 10,000 megawatt storage, I enable 30,000 power transmission for my pocket. Now for 10,000 megawatt, I am avoiding 10,000 crore transmission investment in one shot actually. At the same time, by storing, I am providing a quality power to them. That is one of the index where we talk about economics. Third analysis we have done in Greenko is that we try to talk about it when, because today, as Anirudh Kumar Sahib has already said, the energy storage is not an issue basically. Everybody knows the Doug curve basically, and everybody knows by 2024, and even there's a CEO report, if we talk about 175 gigawatt, the thermal has to go as low as 27%. And if we go beyond 2022, 24, and 2030, there may be a negative thermal generation, which are all, which is not technically feasible. This generation, if we are shifting to this one, the question becomes, what is the cost of it? Because certainly, there is a cost for, storing, then there is a cost of the generation. Certainly, when we talk about, we have done the analysis for 2030, 2022, 2024, we find that during peak time, there will be a large quantum of thermal generation whose variable cost will be quite high actually, where this high variable cost thermal generation can be replaced by storing the RE energy and transferring during the peak time. At the same time, allowing thermal to run at its technical minimum level, in the sense that we can operate thermal also in a reasonable, optimal manner, so that we take a benefit of running thermal at a more efficient, better specific heat rate on better auxiliary consumptions, and avoiding wear and tear at one time. Those are also having a cost basically, and also avoiding an energy which thermal energy which may having a higher variable cost during peak time actually. And our analysis has said that if we go progressively from 2020, say 2022, 2024 to 2030, progressively from the technical need, because of the thermal limitation and because of RE integration, it goes towards economics towards 2030 basically. What I mean to say is, at the present today, if we talk about 2022, 2024 time frame, maybe it becomes because of the technical need, because we want to operate the whole system in a more optimal manner. Maybe at that time, some percentage of things may require a support for developing these storages, or maybe we can talk about NOD model basically. NOD model in the sense like in transmission, we introduce many transmission elements which are required for reliable operation of the power system, but that we are recovering through the NOD model because that is a need of the grid actually. And progressively, the best thing in storage would be, presently it may be the need basically. Tomorrow it may become an economic better option of the energy, along with the cheap, economic and climate friendly RE power. This is my broad conclusion. Though we have done a lot of analysis to to support whatever we are talking about, and I've tried to put whatever I said in form of slides. This is broadly my input for energy storage, and I really compliment and I really congratulate this IRADE to bring us such a good report, which give a lot of illustration and international comparison, where the pump storage has come over there in different countries which have a large RE integration. And another thing which I like to add is, when we talk about large capacity of gigawatt and gigawatt hour, the best benefit is that this large gigawatt hour can be used for multi aspects. Multi aspect in the sense, this can be part of a RE energy model, like the peak power or maybe around the clock power or a flexible power. We can take some value out of it. Some value we can talk about, avoiding the transmission investment. Third, some value we can talk about by taking ancillary services, demand side management, or the deviation settlement. So what I mean to say, if we have a larger capacity in terms of gigawatt and in gigawatt hour, and if we have a multi business revenue model, then each business model can cost subsidize, and maybe that the difference between the peak and off peak will come down if we try to share the revenue in the different stream, which we can entertain from a large capacity of gigawatt and gigawatt hour. This is the broad summary which I have covered in the part of my slides.
Thank you, Mr. Sehgal, for your perspectives. Yes, definitely, it improves not only the intermittency, it actually helps the thermal plants to operate at plant load factor, and so doesn't lose. So thermal plants don't lose efficiency and don't lose on auxiliary consumption. And of course, if it is placed, if the storage is next to a wind generator, it also saves on transmission costs because the fluctuations get reduced, and therefore you require a lesser amount of evacuation system. Thank you very much. We finished with all the panelists, and I did now request Dr. Kirit Parikh, chairman of this session, to give his remarks.
There is one point I would like to add. Since such type of storage are required for the large RE integration, because that need has already been established, certainly its development required certain, the support from the policy and the regulatory point of view also. Like, as a closed loop off river pump storage, because their characteristics are different than the other hydro projects. Therefore, what we want, that the type of clearances which is required from various departments, if those could be shortened basically, then it will help in developing those closed loop pump storage projects, matching with the pace with which RE integration is taking place. So a lot of advocacy is required for such type of clearances support from the government department. And also many regulatory things are required for development of storage.
Right. Thank you. Sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Batra, and various the different panelists. I think they have given us a rich menu for thinking and identifying some of the problems that we face. Some of these were alluded in our report anyway, which says that yes, we need to worry about the difference between peak and off-peak power charges. We need to worry about what kind of financing system we should have. Can we have a cheap finance with backloaded tariff? Would that be sufficient? Can we worry about what kind of environmental costs relatively with battery storage and pump storage, say off-river pump storage would be? These are some of the issues that we need to worry about. I think Mr. Chakravarti also pointed out that the ramping rate for hydro power can be reduced by having certain amount of spinning reserves maintained. Now, if you do that, how much of loss in energy generation is there? We need to account for that. And we need to worry about what is the kind of a cost of thermal power, backing it down. People have talked about the cost, the increase in the variable cost. But when you back down an existing plant and run it instead of 70% to 55%, the capacity charges also increases because you have to now collect it from a smaller amount of generation than otherwise. And I think what we really need to think about is, the point that was made out with the last speaker is the difference between minimum and maximum demand is increasing, that the load pattern, consumption pattern is changing, and therefore the need for balancing power becomes even larger, which gets sort of coupled along with the fact that we are having a much larger share of renewable capacity into the system. So I think the whole idea of balancing becomes extremely critical for any kind of a vision that we may have of a sustainable, low-carbon power system that can function in an effective way. I believe that we need to explore many of these issues further, certainly at least develop some kind of a financing mechanism. Even the whole idea of ancillary power markets we should examine. And this requires further analysis of any kind. But the discussion today has pointed out many aspects of this problem that we need to factor into the situation. And it's one thing is clear that yes, off-river pump storage is an extremely attractive possible solution that we should really compare it with other solutions which are available, taking into account the cost, the environmental benefits, the need for ramping up systems, and how can we manage it to minimize the total system cost and yet provide stable frequency and voltage based round-the-clock power to all people concerned. And I think that should be our main goal. And for that, we should really examine this. I think we can do a lot of analysis can be done, it seems to me, to work out, at least in a preliminary way, what some of the possible solutions would be. I think I thank all the participants, the speakers particularly. I think each one of them brought some point or other which was a critical element in understanding this.
Thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom. I thank all the panelists and all the people who are here right through the session, including those who graced the inaugural session, if some of them are still here. I thank you all for joining this webinar. We will not have time for question and answers here, so we will post all the answers on the website of there are some very interesting questions, and we will post all the answers of all these questions on the website of IRADe. Thank you.